All right, guys. Well, welcome back to the Former Farm Kid channel. Yeah, it's been a little slow. Uh, some of the things I've done here, I just was not able to video. But I wanted to run this by everybody to see basically what you think. I've got a 2013 Toyota Yaris. It's been a good little car. I bought it after I retired. It's like I said, a 2013. It's got a lot of room inside. You can fold down the seats. You can get an 8-foot 2x4 in there. Really nice. It's got 47,000 plus miles on it. I was hoping this is going to be the last car-wise, I ever had to buy, but judging by the corrosion underneath, I'm thinking I'll be lucky if I can get another 5 years out of it. So last year I went to the Toyota dealer and to buy some good oil and a engine oil change filter kit. And I figure, well, as long as I'm there, I'll go ahead and get the transmission kit. So I'm talking to the guy behind the counter, and he talked me out of doing my transmission. He goes, what's the point of pulling the plug, draining the oil, putting a new filter in, when you're going to leave about half that oil in the transmission? And he's got a good point. The only way to get all the oil out from the tranny, and by the way, this is a little 4-baner. It's a 1NZ FE engine, and no adjustments necessary, which is really nice. This engine has been such a good runner. I mean, I would have loved to race this car. I mean, it just screams. But at any rate, back to the transmission. So I listened to this guy, and most of these parts guys at Toyota dealers are mechanics that, I shouldn't say most. I just assumed this guy was a mechanic who got sick of turning wrenches, decided to go into parts, because they're very knowledgeable. And this guy, was pretty impressive. He knew exactly what I needed and all that. So he's more or less advocating that what's the point of changing the oil? You're gonna change half the oil, and you're not going to really make a big difference. So he talked me out of it. And so when I was rethinking the whole thing here this year, I pulled my dipstick out and decided to actually read what it says. And this is what it says, which agrees with what he told me. It says, notice, no need, let me see if I can steady this up a little bit more so I'm not shaking so bad. No need to replace automatic transmission fluid, having a hard time focusing, under normal driving condition. Transfer fluid for four-wheel drive is different. This does not have a transfer case on it, so far as I know. Most four-wheel, I guess all four-wheel vehicles do. And stupid thing still won't focus here. There we go. See owner's manual when replacing. Okay, so basically what it's saying is that you don't have to ever change the fluid. Well, and for those of you that have some of these new generation lawnmowers, this is, a cheapo John Deere 335. This has a sealed case on it as well. So you can't change the oil on these things, although somebody has probably figured out how to do it. I guess you can take it to John Deere and let them do it. But the owner's manual says you don't ever have to do it on these either. Well, the cars, and again, this is a 2013, 47,000 miles on it. The cars are now saying that as well. So, great. But here's something you might want to think about. So I had already bought the transmission oil change filter kit before I talked to some mechanics. So, you know, last year I never did it. And then this year I figured, I said, well, you know, I've got the stupid filter, I've got the new gasket. Why not just go ahead and do it anyway, just to change the filter? Well, after 11 years, yeah, you may not have to change the fluid, but what that mechanic failed to recognize, and me too for that matter, is the condition of the filter. And not only the filter, there's one other thing that I totally forgot about as well. So here's a couple things. Here's what it looks like. This is how it's actually mounted in the car. It goes up. It has an O-ring right here that seals in, so the oil is coming in this direction. It is exiting out through this hole. And it may be a little tough to see here. Try to get it into the sun. Probably not. This is probably not going to show up. Yeah, now that the oil has flowed back onto it. But when it dried out a little bit, because I've had it out for 24 hours now, it dried out a little bit. There was a fair amount of crud right along this edge right here on the filter material, whatever that is. So it's pretty easy to change. 2 bolts here, 1 bolt here, so 3 bolts hold it in. And this cover I thought was going to be a real bear to get off, and I looked up the torque settings on these things. They're only torqued to 6 pounds, so the bolts came like out way too easy. And usually you got to take a rubber headed mallet and, you know, whack the snot out of it to get it off. Well, Toyota, to their credit, assembles, at least on this part, with no material on the gasket. And most mechanics will tell you, if you got a decent gasket, you really don't need any sealant that is not under pressure. In this case, of course, that holds the oil is not under pressure. So Toyota assembles this with no assembly lube, although there might have been, I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell. They might have stuck it to the case with something before they assembled, because I was able to get just a tiny bit off one of these edges. Yeah, here it is right here. This little white stuff right here, and maybe that's just road gunk. It's hard to say. And another good reason why you don't need to do that. Number one, it's not a good idea to do it, because if you overdo it on either surface, you might force some of that into the case, potentially. Who knows? You don't want to contaminate your fluid for sure. But most importantly, and hopefully it will pick up here if I can get on the right angle, the case itself has a rib, and it may be hard to tell, but there's a little valley in this gasket right here that the rib on that case, as it gets torqued down, creates. And I tell you what, it does such a good job of sealing. And of course, coming from the factory, 11 years, even with these bolts only torqued to 6 pounds, 6 foot-pounds, this thing has never leaked a single drop. Okay, so the filter, good reason to go ahead and open this thing up. I also, of course, clean the case, which I have back on the car already. There was really nothing in the case. But the other big thing that I fail to recognize, and the mechanic as well, is the magnets. My magnets, after 11 years, 47,000 miles, were so gunked up that I could barely get them clean with shop towels. I'm going to say the amount of material they had on them, a good 1/16 of an inch of gunk. And it, obviously, was it metal? It was probably gunk with metal. And I would presume that as those magnets get loaded with junk, that their ability to readily attract metal fines in the oil has got to diminish. So, wow, after seeing those, it's like I went too long. 11 years of not changing anything, not a good idea. So got them all cleaned up, put back in. Well, I got them back in after the second try. I actually put the case back on, had it all tightened down, was ready to put oil into it, and then discovered that I left the magnets out because I set them aside to really give them a good clean. And they do go in specific spots. There's an anchor on the case, and one goes here, another goes up here, and you will see that on the case. So they're in the right spot, and it's got to do with who knows what. But anyway, Toyota has a special place for those. So I had to take it back off, make sure the magnets were good and cleaned up, and put it back together. So hopefully, you know, it may be in my mind, but the car does seem to shift a little crisper now. And again, that may just be my imagination. Was the filter actually, even if the filter was slowing down the egress into the case, I mean, there is a good 3 quarts of oil sitting in this case. And by the way, the only way to really get all the fluid out of the transmission, the oil cooler, and normally I'll put a little air to the oil cooler line to blow it out, and the torque converter, because that's one thing I had failed to recognize, is that the torque converter is fed by this same oil, is with a flush. And, you know, I'm not set up to do that. Toyota won't even quote a price. They won't tell you what it's going to cost until they get the job done. At least last time I asked, because if, for instance, this system holds a little over 6 quarts, it may take 10 to 18 quarts to fully flush that, because what you're doing is adding new to old, and my understanding is they keep flushing it until they see all, you know, new oil coming out of the flush through the engine. So is that worth doing? If I had a big truck, I think, that was doing a lot of hard work or getting a lot of miles, I think I would definitely do it. On a little car like this, I really think it's overkill, unless you're in really dirty conditions like it says, and then it might be a good idea. So outside of that, I think, you know, tell me what you think. If you agree, not agree, if you think it's a bad idea, good idea, I appreciate it. All right, guys, God bless. Keep up the great work, and we'll catch you next time around.